Hello, everyone. I hope everybody can see me. Please give me a little hello if you can see me. My name is Denta, and today is a big day because we are talking to the ambassador that I'm sure that you've seen the promotion, you've seen what's currently happening in China. But for me, the bigger conversation is about Africa. How do we move on to build our nation? And, to join me is the ambassador. I've also got Daniel, who's going to be joining me, and he is from China. So he's going to give us a little insight to what is actually happening in China for foreigners. And so I'm really excited. I'm also going to have different people popping in and out of the conversation. I've also got Ebro. He is a radio presenter that's on Hot FM in the US, and he's going to be joining the conversation. So I've just seen that ambassador has joined. I'm just going to add her.
Let me go get my mic.
Hello, ambassador. Okay.
Yes, let me go get my earphones, my headphones. I think
okay.
It'll be easier.
All right. I'll just get her to get ready, and then I will put her on. Hello, everyone. Right, this is exciting. Let me just when ambassador is ready, I'm going to add her. And hello, Vera. Nice to meet you. Hello, Angela. All right. Okay. I'll just let ambassador just get ready, and we will get the conversation going. Obviously, there's a lot happening, guys. There's a lot happening in China. There's a lot happening with this COVID-19. And so, we really want to have this conversation and see how we can move on as a nation. Let me see if ambassador is now ready. Oh, fantastic. Ambassador, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well. We have a lot of viewers watching at the moment. First of all, I just want to say, how are you? I know you're a doctor, and obviously with everything that's happening with this COVID-19, you've been a doctor for over 25 years. And I think
that's correct.
Every interview that I see you having, people don't really talk about that, and I want to focus on that for the beginning, before we'll delve into our topic. Born in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Born in Zimbabwe, you came over to the US, studied, and you're a doctor. What kind of doctor are you? Are you a gynecologist? Are you a surgical doctor?
I'm a a family physician.
Okay.
I'm trying to adjust my camera here. Let's see. That's better. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about, your journey as a doctor for over 25 years. Let's talk about that first as a start.
Well, it's been really unremarkable. I came in, went to college, did my master's degree, and followed by going to medical school. My initial residency was in general surgery. I was at the State University of New York in Brooklyn for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then I had 2 babies during my program. Mm-hmm. Initially, I was supposed to just take off for a year. But while I was home, I couldn't stay home for a whole year. I thought I could check into a family practice program just to spend that year. And then I found out that actually I was in my element. Wow. So I went ahead and finished the 3-year program in family medicine. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I started my practice, and I did that for 25 years.
Wow. And then obviously how we know you is that, you are the former AU ambassador. And you are, I would say, I'm a big fan of your interviews, your no nonsense style, at an elite level. You're very passionate about Africa, and about Africans and the diaspora, especially, and what part that we can play. Now, your time at the AU, how do you think, or what do you think you were able to achieve as an AU ambassador during your time?
Well, I think I was able to accomplish one thing which most heads of states are still struggling with, which is to bring together the African diaspora. We are very divided as a people, as Black people in general, but more importantly, at this time, with the African Continental Free Trade Area, it is a time that is calling for all of us to unite and begin to look at being on the driver's seat when it comes to the Continental Development Agenda. People must understand the African Continental Free Trade Area is a monumental achievement from the African heads of states, and yet you don't hear too much about it. If we do not unite as children of Africa to really participate in the Continental Development Agenda, then we have no one to blame but ourselves. The reality is, development of Africa is now moving to the continental level. We're now talking about growing wheat to feed 1.27 billion people. We are now talking about water access to 1.27 billion people, access to power to the continent, not to one country. So the conversation is about infrastructure development at a continental level.
Okay.
Now, here's what I was able to at least share with the African diaspora, to say, you don't go to China and find Black people driving the Chinese development agenda. You don't go to Mexico, you don't go to Europe and find Black people driving the agendas for those nations. You therefore must not go to Africa and find non-Africans driving the African continental agenda, unless if we, the children of Africa, choose to vacate that place that belongs to us. The heads of states have completed the unfinished business that was started by the Pan-African fathers in 1963 when they created Organization of African Unity, which was a compromise agreement. Because the Casablanca group, who were Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, they were saying Africa for the Africans, African Union now. They wanted the boundaries to disappear.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they were not the majority. So they lost. They come up with this compromise. So from 1963 up until 2018, the heads of states had not been able to reach a consensus on this issue, which is so crucial if Africa is to move forward. So it is so important that every person of African descent, people on the continent, understand that if we do not come together and come up with the continental, if we don't come up with the Continental Development Agenda, Chinese are ready. They have their own agenda of how they're going to come to Africa, looking at having 300 million Chinese in Africa by 2030. How crazy is that? The Europeans are ready. They have their own agenda for Africa. The people who should have an agenda for Africa is us, the African diaspora, and our brothers and sisters on the... We have to realize that this is a do or die moment. So if you can say there was something I was able to accomplish, was to take that message to the diaspora, to say, my brothers and sisters, we must wake up. But also, secondly, to also share with my brothers and sisters that our problems, yes, we have issues of corruption in Africa, but the biggest corruption in Africa today is coming from outside. I often say, if everybody in Africa was to stop from being corrupt, there will still be corruption in Africa today. And what I was able to really clarify to them is to say, the corruption watchdogs, they tell us 50 billion is getting out of Africa every year from corruption. I get that, and we must go after it. But at the same time, there is 500 billion getting out of Africa from one little country called France. There is so much outrage from the diaspora over the 50 billion, but not a word over the 500 billion going to a small country. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted the diaspora to understand that don't find yourself being told to fight with your brothers and sisters over which one of you got the larger chunk of the crumb under the table. So you'll never talk about the real meal on the table. Our colonizers are on the table in our house, eating our food. We would have cooked the food, and then after we serve them, we go under the table and wait for them to drop off a few crumbs. And those are the crumbs that we're fighting about. So I wanted everybody to understand that yes, we have issues with corruption, but let's put things in perspective. Because taking care of problem number 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, if you don't address problem number 1 to 5, it doesn't matter what you do with number 6, because the foundation of the problem is still there. The root cause of the problems is still there. And our colonizers are still a big problem, for they never left Africa. They gave us political independence, but they kept the economic independence. I can give you an example right now. There's a company in Zambia called, starts with a G. Can't remember the name. Okay. They just laid off 11,000 people. Wow. Why? Because they have not been paying taxes. They're sending all their money through these tax havens. All of these large companies are doing that. So when the government has been trying for years, I think it's so now they're mad at the government and they're packing up and they're leaving. This is what a lot of heads of state are dealing with. These major corporations are not paying taxes. They're sending all their money to these tax havens. This is causing them to take billions out of Africa. Nobody talks about it. So if there's any other accomplishments, was to let the diaspora understand what is really going on in our Africa. We are being robbed in plain daylight. Right. And yet they throw us a shiny object and they want us to run after the shiny object while the real issues are in the opposite direction. So to the diaspora, I say, my brothers and sisters, wake up and smell the coffee. Understand what is really going on in your Africa. I would like to think that maybe that may be what I have been able to make some inroads. We still have a long way to go, but that's conversations that have started, the conversations that are badly needed.
Absolutely. But what I'm so profounded about is the fact that we just hear your voice. We don't hear any other voices backing or supporting the things that you're saying. Why is that? Ambassador, can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Ambassador, can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Let me come out and sign back in.
Ambassador, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me? Okay, so technical difficulties, it's the first time, so please bear with us. But I am trying to get her back. She's going to rejoin in. If Daniel, if you are watching, please try and join the conversation. Daniel is from China. He's Ghanaian, and he's just going to throw a little spotlight on exactly what is happening in China. Let me see okay, so I see that Daniel is here. I'm just gonna see if Ambassador is gonna be able to reconnect. Bear with me. I'm just gonna try and reconnect. Okay. Let me add Daniel. Hello? Daniel? Your reception is not great. Ambassador? Can you hear me? Oh dear. Ambassador, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect, perfect. I was saying in my last question is that, we only seem to hear your voice talking about these issues. Why isn't there anybody else talking about these issues? Why is that?
Can you repeat your question?
Ambassador, I was saying that we don't seem to hear anybody talking about the issues that you talk about. We don't hear anybody having the guts and the kind of the tenacity to talk about these issues. What is the why is that?
Well, I can't answer that question, but I do know that when it comes to the diaspora population, they just didn't know. They simply did not know. So I'm doing my part to inform them and educate them about what's going on. Because once we know our history, the rest is easy. Quite often, as diaspora, we are not doing the right thing because we don't know. So we need to understand our issues from the root and not from the superficial point of view that they want us to understand them.
Yeah, but even in the AU, we don't hear anybody who was as vocal as you were, you know, really saying how things are, you know, just how it is. You're just saying things how it is.
Well, I can't speak for others. What I do know is I was asked by Madam Zuma to go to Washington to represent 1.27 billion people. And I was determined I was going to do that. I didn't come to Washington to drink tea and coffee. I didn't come to Washington to make friends. I came to Washington to represent 1.27 billion people. If either I represented the 1.27 billion people or I had no business being there. I could not sit and watch what I saw happening and not speak up to it. I can easily go back to becoming a doctor. I need not have stayed in Washington if I'm only going to be a mute. That's not me. And I came here to work. I rolled up my sleeves and I went to work.
And how, how did you feel when, the AU sent you a letter to say that they no longer wanted you part of the AU? How was the feeling like, especially with all the input that you have put into the AU?
Actually, I was expecting the call 5 months earlier. There had been a situation that took place that I wondered why the chairperson had not called me. He didn't call me, which was fine. So when the call came, I wasn't surprised. I even told the chief of staff who called me. I said, oh, I was expecting this call 5 months ago. He's new, so he wasn't aware of the situation that took place before he came. Mm-hmm. He never asked me what that situation was, but be it as it may, it was not a surprise at all. Okay. To tell you the truth, it was really time to move on. I had completed my task that I was sent by the good Lord to come and do in Washington. That phase of the journey was done, and now we are on the second phase of the journey.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
For me, I was already mobilizing the African diaspora even before I came to Washington. So really, the AU mission was a building. Okay. The work that I was doing was going to continue with or without that building and that name. Because for me, my passion is to see that we, the diaspora, we do and play our part in building the Africa that we want.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to go into the conversation that we had about China. Obviously, I saw your video and you were very passionate about, us really standing on our own as Africans and being able to do things on our own. What and how do you feel about China and their relationship with Africa?
Well, I have to say, when you look at the situation with Africa, prior to the Chinese, we had the West. We did have the colonizers and all the atrocities they've been committing, starting with the big one, which is the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization, where, for those who are not aware, the French are taking over $500 billion out of Africa every year. In addition, the French are printing the money for those 14 African countries. If they have to deposit, now they're down to about 50 to 60% of their bank reserves. Should they need some of that money, they have to request it as a loan at commercial interest rates. The French people also have to make sure that all their military equipment can only be ordered from France. Their military can only be trained by France. And the French have military presence in their countries, and that France can invade them without notice if they feel French interests are being violated. They also said all the contracts, private and public, French companies have the first right of refusal. And whatever the French companies do not want, that's what the local Black-owned companies can have. So when you take all that into consideration, there's not much left for the country, which is why even today, the average Black person in some of those countries is struggling to get contracts because most of the contracts are going to the French. So that alone is huge, and it continues to this day. Then you take the remainder of the other countries. If you were a British colony, if you were colonized by the Belgians, the Germans, the Portuguese, all those companies that go back to colonization, they remain the major employers, like what Glencore is doing, just trying to close up and leave 11,000 people unemployed. All those major employers in most of the African countries, they're owned by companies that go back to colonization. They're owned by companies that are, whose bases are in the former colonizers. So we don't have our economic, we don't have control of our economic status in all those African countries. It makes it very difficult for a leader to try and push back against those companies because the retaliation is devastating. So we have to look at some of those basics to say, we still don't own our economy. We don't control the African economies. And that remains a serious challenge. And that was done intentionally by the colonizers through the Berlin Conference. This is why I keep going back to the Berlin Conference, because that is when they set out the strategy to divide us in such a way that we'll always be chasing our little tails as little countries. What's needed is for Africa to come together and speak with one voice.
Absolutely. So the current situation in China, you know, China and Africa have had a good relationship for many years, for decades. They've built the Nairobi Railway. As you know, they've done so many things in Africa. But what is currently happening now is a bit disheartening. How do you feel about that?
Right. So actually, the point I was trying to make by saying the colonizers are still in Africa, they haven't left. So for over 60 years, we got our independence, different countries. Our only option were the former colonizers, were the West. So it was refreshing to see China coming in and giving us an option. It's actually refreshing to see other countries coming in and giving us an option. So we don't have to be stuck with the former colonizers as the only option. So yes, China was welcome. The only problem is the manner in which China came by insisting on bringing their own employees. But even then, I will say I can let it go because we need to own that responsibility. We should have negotiated better. We should have told China, if you bring in 50 people, then the other 50, if job needs 100 people, 50 should be yours, the other 50 are local, and you gotta train the local people. We failed to do better negotiations, but I can tell you, since the last meeting the heads of states had with the president of China in 2018, a lot of that has changed. A lot of bad contracts that China had been involved with various countries have been canceled. So the heads of state are realizing that, and they're addressing that issue. So I think as far as trading with China, that situation is being addressed and things are getting better. The problem is now with the individual citizens. They're the ones who are just downright racist. Even on the continent, they are abusing the Africans on our own continent. And then, of course, what's happening or in China itself, they just have no respect for Black people. They're racist to the core, some of them. Not all of them, don't get me wrong. Many of them are good people, but we have a significant percentage that are just racist. So if they don't like Africans, then maybe they just need to get out of Africa as well. It's really that simple. I know I heard of Bobby Wine planning on airlifting Africans out of China. Well, my position is if African leaders have to airlift their people out of China, then President Xi Jinping needs to start looking at airlifting his own people out of Africa. But what I do know is we're not taking any abuse anymore from anybody, period.
Absolutely. Well, I have Daniel joining us from China. He's actually Ghanaian, and he's going to be telling us, Daniel, what is the situation in China at the moment for foreigners?
Well, greetings to the ambassador. Ever since the corona, the imported cases started going up, the narrative here in China has been that the foreigners are a threat to the resurgence of coronavirus in China. So the foreigners, black, white, whoever, anyone who is a foreigner in China has now become the virus itself. Let me use that term. So you are now seen as the virus. That is why you will see videos online of people being rejected from shops, and you will see police going to check on a couple. The man is black, the woman is Chinese, but they will prefer to check on the man because we are now the virus. And the story I got to hear was that there were about 111 cases of imported virus into Guangdong province. And out of the 111 cases, I think 25 of them were foreigners, out of which about 9 were Nigerians. And what Ambassador said is very right. Some of the individuals are pushing this racist behavior. There were articles online about how the blacks are on the street, so people should not come out of their companies or out of their homes, or the blacks are on the buses, so people should not come out. There have been very, very racist comments that if the entire continent of Africa should get to see by themselves, I don't think we would love them too much. However, like Ambassador said, there are still quite a number of them who are very good, and they really regret what is happening here. Some Chinese people really regret, but the majority of them can't speak up. They regret it. They tell individuals that we are very sorry about what is going on, but they can't speak up for us. Obviously, they won't speak up for us. You know, they are not part of us. You know, so it's very disheartening to see what is going on here. The good news is that the Ghanaians remain and Africans remain very united about what is going on. When we see articles that report issues that are not the truth, we report these articles to the right authorities for them to take the articles down or to correct the articles. We can only do so much. The enthusiasm with which a lot of the youth are talking about this issue now, I believe that the time for African unity is now. And we have to now explore the strategies to take advantage of the enthusiasm and the energy that is within us before it dies out. So I keep telling my friends that the time for us to unite is now. And we need the plan. We need a strategy. We need people to share ideas. Those who have gone ahead of us to lead as the youth, we are ready to come back home. We've learned a lot. Those of us in China have learned a lot about how China got there. I came here as a PhD student in strategy. I opened my eyes. We spoke a lot among ourselves. We've spoken to some Chinese people who have been very sincere and honest with us about how China got to where it got to. And I think that we are more than competent in Africa to develop our own systems, infrastructure. We just need the support of the larger organization, which is the government, to be able to implement some of these things that we have seen in the West and in the East to bring Africa together again.
Absolutely. Ambassador, do you have anything to say with that? Uh-oh. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if I can. Ambassador, you're on mute. I can't hear you. You're on mute. Uh-oh. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. I did not hear anything he said, unfortunately.
Oh.
Can you hear him now?
Hello?
Hi, hello.
I can hear you.
All right, great.
I'm having problem. He's breaking up so badly. I can't understand him.
Okay, he's saying that basically they are seen as the virus now in China. So the foreigners are seen as they are the COVID-19. And so it's very difficult now. They've been, you know, when they go to
it's really bad. I can't understand you.
Okay. Ambassador, can you hear me?
That's better, yes, better.
Okay. He said
okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, basically what he said was that now the foreigners and Africans are seen as they are the COVID-19 in China. That's how they are seen. So when they go out in the public, they are looked on, they are frowned upon, and this is happening right now in China.
Well, again, that's actually an excuse because they are doing it even on the continent. The underlying factor is that they are racist to the core. There's no way China is the one that started with COVID-19. It's ludicrous to want to blame it on the African. It's just a lame excuse. We are not going to accept that. They are racist people. They should not have been doing what they're doing. Their treatment of Africa is unacceptable, and we will not tolerate it. That's just an excuse. They know COVID-19 started in China, and to want to blame it on the Africans, that is ludicrous. Insanity of the highest order. We will not accept that. President Xi Jinping needs to fix this. This is a very serious matter. They need to understand that we also have our own Africa, and we have our own laws. And so this cannot continue. We only have about 700,000 Africans in China, and there are over 10 million Chinese in Africa. I'm not even sure how they think they can do this and get away with it. Well, they're not going to get away with it this time, because we, the citizens, are not going to sit back and watch this nonsense go on. They need to stop. To accuse the Africans of bringing COVID-19 to China, that is just unbelievable. They are racist. Those who are doing it, who are perpetrating these abuses to the Africans, they're racist, plain and simple. Let's call them what they are.
Okay, so we have a question from D. Sims. She says, why does the West allow the French to impose their colonial will?
Well, again, you have to realize that and say the West. Let's talk about the main colonizers. We got France, we got Britain, we got Germany, we got Portugal, and some Italian. But at the end of the day, we were divided up into these tiny little countries. Each country has to wage its own battle against the colonizers. So even though the enemy is a common enemy, which is France, Cote d'Ivoire has to fight as Cote d'Ivoire. DRC has to fight as DRC. Senegal has to fight as Senegal. If they were all to come together and speak one voice, they become a bigger voice that can then take a position and say enough is enough. Which is why I go back and say the African Continental Free Trade Area is really the answer to Africa's problems when we can speak with one voice.
Absolutely.
But as individual African countries will never succeed.
Okay, and you mentioned DRC. So the DC has been critical with the viability of small and weaker Africa states. Would loose regional federations with city-states be a better model for governance?
Okay, you were breaking up again. Could you repeat your question?
Okay, do you think that would loose regional federations with city-states be a better model for governance?
Again, that's a decision that has to come from the heads of states. It's up to the leaders to decide whether they want to have regional governance. But I can tell you, just based on the efforts to try implement the African Continental Free Trade Area, conversations, governance structures similar to what you're describing, maybe a while away from now. I think we should concentrate on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. That's a good step in the right direction. And then other conversations might take place. For example, we need to have a single African army. We need a single African currency. We need a single African monetary policy. We need our own financial institutions at a continental level, like the African Stock Exchange. All those things need to be addressed. And until we can achieve some of that integration at that level, it's a difficult conversation. Keep in mind, it took us from 1963 to 2018 for us to have the heads of states come up with the decision, which is now the African Continental Free Trade Area, where they have agreed that Africa needs to enter the world market as one customs union. It took us 56 years to get this decision. So you can imagine going back again and trying to start with yet another one. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but I'm hoping that we can all wake up enough and realize that we're still suffering from the legacy of slavery and the legacy of colonization. Because if the truth be told, there are representatives from various governments who are participating in these conversations, and they need to stand up. They need to push back and just tell these colonizers the truth. They are abusing us. They are spitting in our faces. They are beating us up. They are burning us. And we're supposed to be nice. And how long do they need to continue to beat us up before we all come together and say enough is enough? I'm hoping that we are getting to where the average Black person is simply sick and tired of being sick and tired. We can't continue to take this abuse. And they, the colonizers, they know it. They know that they're abusing. That's the sad part. They know they're abusing us, and we need to tell them to stop. That's just all there is to it. They need to stop abusing Africa. They need to stop exploiting Africa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Adjoa, I've got Adjoa Chum, who is into governance. Adjoa, what is your, I mean, we had a discussion in terms of governance. What do you think? How do we move fast forward with the governance for Africa?
So thank you very much, Denta, and thank you, Ambassador. Also, really exciting conversation here. So my perspective, and first of all, before we move to the governance, I'll just give a little my thoughts on what the diaspora can do, and then link it to the governance. So I believe that the diaspora in this part of the world, in Europe, and also across the world, we need to come together and see ourselves as one people. We need to unite, and when we are united, there is, so much, only so much that we can achieve. We can achieve so much as a united people. And of course, when we come together, we can then begin to see ourselves as the children of Mother Africa, and then we can build trust with each other. Now, after we build trust with each other, we can then begin to do business with each other and invest. And of course, once we start to invest and do business with each other, we can then take the business to Africa, and then help the Africans, those that are on the continent. We are privileged to be a little bit more advanced in the way we do certain things. And so we can give the Africans on the continent opportunity to come here and to learn ways of doing things differently as well. Now back to the governance question. My organization.
Ambassador, can you hear her?
I can't hear anything she said. That's why I took my earplugs off. There's a lot of static.
Oh, really?
And she's broken up, so I can't hear anything she's saying.
You can't hear her at all.
Okay.
I could not hear anything. See, there was a lot of static.
Okay,
is the reception better? Can you hear me now? Denta, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it looks like
I cannot hear her. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. I'll tell you what she says after.
Okay. So basically, after we are united and we think of investing in Africa and we're helping the diaspora in terms of the knowledge that we've gained here. Now, my organization, EBI Compliance, what we are doing is really bringing awareness on how the Africans can have so a lot of awareness in terms of the insights that we need when we're doing our due diligence. So, for example, with China, and not just China, anyone else that comes to Africa to invest, as much as they would also do their due diligence to understand the people and why they want to invest there, we also need to understand better who we're doing business with. And I think in that way, a lot of these contracts that have been quite unfair to Africans, that would be a nice opportunity to find out a lot more about these contracts before we enter into them. So that's kind of my perspective on this. And thank you very much, Denta.
Thank you, Adjoa. Thank you. Ambassador, so you didn't catch any of that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think when you bring in the third person, that's when I get a lot of static.
You get a lot of static.
Bad in my.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and then the voices. Yeah.
Okay. So with the tension between Africans in China, what can we realistically expect from African governments by a way of support? Should the African Union be vocal on these matters?
You would think that the entity that should be very vocal on this issue is the African Union. Absolutely. Chairman Faki should be all over the waves talking about it and condemning the abuse of Africans. Yes, I agree. We should be hearing more from Faki.
And what about the African governments? We don't seem to hear anybody speaking outward like you are.
Actually, I know they're talking, they're using the diplomatic circles. Conversations are taking place. I'm aware of quite a few countries that have called on the Chinese ambassadors in their countries. So I do know from an individual country point of view there are conversations taking place. I think Nigeria has been the most vocal. And so conversations are taking place. But I can't speak beyond that.
Okay. So how should Africans in the diaspora be uniting to provide support to the continent? Is now the time for everyone to realize that Africa is the place we can not only achieve our dreams, but truly build for our youth?
I think it is time for diaspora to realize that we all must put our money where our mouth is. We can no longer say it's just talk. You know, we really need to realize that if we have to come together, we got to pull on our resources together because we have the financial resources. If you look at the fact that we are putting into Africa with remittances, that's continental Africans alone, over $60 billion every year. That's a lot of money. So you can imagine if we take 1 million diaspora, there are about 9 to 10 million continental Africans. There are about another 40 million African Americans. If you take the United States alone, it's about 50 million Black people. If everybody came up, not everybody, let's just say we take 1 million. 1 million people with $1,000, that's $1 billion. That's how easy we can build up wealth with everybody just coming up with whatever small amount they have, and we keep doing it year in and year out. That's how the Jews do it. They pull their monies together. But we don't believe in each other. We don't trust each other. We become very selfish. It's all about where I come from, my village, my tribe. Not even at a national level are we united. So that remains the biggest problem among us Black people. The divisions among us are killing us. We're living here in the United States, in our case, where we are surrounded by other races who are very united when it comes to issues pertaining to their race. The Chinese are very united, the Indians are very united, the Mexicans, the Irish, the German Americans, Italian Americans. But when you look at Black people, we're so proud to be the only Black people, the Black family living in a white neighborhood. It's like something to be proud of. The other races are so happy to be living alone. You know, we're having Indian communities in this country where they're building their own schools. They're happy to be living in an Indian neighborhood. And yet we Black people, we want to imagine ourselves living in a white neighborhood, and we're out of that. It's really pitiful. But we got to realize that the time for unity is now. If we don't do it for ourselves, we must do it for our children, because we owe it to them to live in a world where they are not disrespected simply because of the color of their skin. If that, it's just something that is completely mind-boggling, even though I understand where it's coming from. It's that same legacy of slavery and colonization. The rule of divide and conquer is alive and well among us. The shackles of the mind remain very tight within us. We must first of all understand that we're suffering from this ailment, because it is you with your shackled mind who goes to the boardroom with a shackled mind, garbage in, garbage out. Unless you go to a boardroom with the right mind, with a mind that is awoken, your decisions are going to be against your own race. Sadly, that is our reality. And I tend to dump this on men because they're the majority of who hold leadership roles when it comes to our Africa, for example, and of course, even here in the diaspora. So those who are in leadership roles, those of you who find yourself in the boardrooms, making decisions, representing Africa, ask yourself, am I colonized? Am I suffering from the legacy of slavery? Each and every one of us needs to have a serious conversation with the image in the mirror. That is our biggest problem at this point. If you were to ask people right now to give you $10, I can assure you 6 months from now, they're going to hackle you down over what you have done with my $10. But you can't say you blame them too, because in some cases, people have made contributions and they have lost their money. So both sides, those who want to exploit others, we all need to realize that that time is over. It's about our unity. It's about our survival. It's about us uniting to demand our. If we don't respect ourselves, I expect the rest of the world to respect us. We must come together, 1 million people with $1,000, that's $1 billion. Now make it 2 million people. Now make it 5 million people. There are over 400. There are over 400 African diaspora around the globe. Give me 5 with $1,000. And then we do it year in and year out. That's why I registered the entity called African Diaspora Development Institute. This institute is where we are all going to come together. I'm looking forward to have people like you open up an ADDI branch in the UK. We can continue. We hope to build Africa houses, starting with 5 of them, 2 in Europe, maybe 3 or 4 in the United States, 1 in China, and 1 in Australia, where we will have conversations about us, where we're going to begin to let everybody know we must get together. We must unite. That is the only way we can get our respect back. So I look forward to hearing all of you. I'm urging all of you to go on to our ADDI, that's OURADDI.org, OurADDI.org, and register. We want to know who you are. We want to know what you do so we can continue to communicate. The plan for ADDI is to open offices in every country. Okay. Can begin to let the heads of states know that no more excuses, no more giving contract to the Chinese first, no more giving contract to the Europeans first, that the children of Africa, with the expertise, with the capacity that is needed, with the funding that is needed, are ready to come home, and that we want to take the driver's seat of Africa's development agenda. That is the plan, that all opportunities must, first right of refusal must be given to the African diaspora. So that is the plan for ADDI. As we open offices in each country, we will be engaging the government and letting them know that the children of Africa are coming home, and that the children of Africa in the diaspora are answering the call from our African heads of states.
Absolutely. And even in the comments, I'm already getting people, I'm happy to give my $1,000 now to register and be part of what you're saying. But one person has put that this will not change overnight. We have been systematically targeted to repeat our behavior as Black people.
That is, which is why we need to realize, I often equate it to, we are all in various stages of this disease. Some of us just need outpatient care. Some need being in the hospital, but in a regular ward. And then some of us are in the intensive care. There are various levels of this disease. The self-hate among us is deep. When you look at the dumb and stupid things that we do to ourselves, how many times have you gone to Africa? I was traveling with my girlfriend, and African-American, but her assistant was a young white lady. Everywhere we went, 2 ambassadors, and our own people, our own children, a lot of these people were young enough to be our children. They were rushing to wait on the white woman who was an assistant, and just because she's white. We do some really dumb things. We automatically take an inferior position if we're meeting with white people. Nobody told us to feel inferior, but we automatically feel inferior. That has got to change. We must realize that we're just as good as anybody else. So the disease starts with the mind. When it's all said and done, it crystallizes to our minds. We must understand that this issue of making Blacks look like everything Black was bad and everything white was better and more desirable, that's just a blatant lie. That is a blatant lie. They tell you the devil is Black. Who has seen the devil? We got to realize that we have been lied to, and we have accepted the lie hook, line, and sinker. We are the origin of humanity. We, especially us Black women, we must realize that without a Black woman, there would not be any other race. A Black woman gave birth to the first human being. If that is not enough reason for you to stand on top of the tallest mountain and tell the world who you are, I don't know what else is. We must understand that we are the most amazing, and I often say, beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated, highly adaptable, and totally indestructible Africans. Absolutely. That is who we are. And I need every little girl growing up and every little boy growing up and the rest of us adults to understand that, and that no one is better than us.
Absolutely. One young lady says, Africans seem to know more about Europeans or Asians than they know of their culture of fellow African countries. We need to change this.
That was all by design. They intentionally wanted us to forget our history, and they fed us the history they felt they needed to know. Even our history from the colonizers' point of view, they hid a lot of history. They destroyed a lot of information about the atrocities they committed on the continent. So we have to rewrite our own history. You're quite right, whoever had that question. It's about time. Many of our countries, we had independence decades ago. There's no reason why we should continue to teach colonial history. I agree with you, which brings me to another point. I have a book sitting at the publishers right now. It's called Africa 101. I urge all of you to go to africa101.org, africa101.org, to africa101.org and reserve your copy. As soon as the publishers are back in the office, we should be, hopefully next week or so, the book should be rolling out. But we must rewrite our history. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. We're waiting for the book. We're eagerly waiting for the book, and we're all going to be purchasing that book. Absolutely. One person, Joseph, says, until the situation of the working poor changes, development is impossible to prove. To what extent have the working poor been engaged and involved in planning development in China?
I'm trying to read the question. To what extent have the working poor been engaged and involved in conceptualizing and planning development in China? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think he meant maybe in Africa, because I don't know.
You mean development in Africa?
Yes.
Okay. As far as that's concerned, we as African Diaspora Development Institute, every entry into a country, we're going to be implementing what we're calling the African Diaspora Women's Empowerment Program and African Diaspora Youth Empowerment Program. We're going to be giving small loans from $250 to $1,000 to help these entrepreneurs and these very hardworking people begin to own a small business and hopefully assist them in growing their businesses. We are only going to do our part. Our brothers and sisters on the continent, the ones who are less privileged, we owe it to help them. We owe it to ourselves to also help them. Let's do our part as the African diaspora, because we can make a difference. You know, the other races are doing it. Look at the Jews. Jewish kids, when they graduate from college, they don't worry about getting a job. Jewish kids, they don't worry about getting a loan to start a business. Jewish kids, they simply have to go to the synagogue and say, I want to go to college. They get a loan to go to college, low interest rate. I have a business plan. I need to start my own business. They get a loan. We are very capable of creating a system similar to that. All we have to do is to believe in each other. So now I'm saying ADDI is the entity that I have put in place. And I can assure you, this entity will be well run and the funds are going to go where the funds are supposed to go. So I'm asking all of you to go to ADDI, be part of it. I'm hoping that you all can help me with establishing an ADDI office in the UK so we can continue the conversation.
Uber would definitely be part of that, and we will be supporting you 125%. So I'm just going to take a few more questions and then we'll wrap up with you, but I have other people that I'm going to be speaking to. So one question is, okay, they're going to order the book right now, but there was a question. 1 second here. Can you see that, Ambassador?
African unity is more like mirage. Will we ever get to a point where we can control Western powers and compel them to accept our terms? Son, that's not going to happen if we come together. You see, as long as we're fighting with one finger, we're not going to win. We need to fight with both punches and give bigger punches. Individual fights, which is as little countries, it's not going to work. So that's why unity is unity is unity. Kwame Nkrumah in 1963, during the creation of the OAU, he was very clear. Keep in mind,
I think I've lost Ambassador. Ambassador? Ambassador, can you hear us? Oh, okay. I think I've lost her. Amma.
Good evening, Denta. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, good, good. I know you've been listening to the conversation. What are your thoughts so far to what Ambassador has been saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's always so great to listen to her because she gives so much context and background. But I think the truth of the matter is that we've been made to feel like children, very infantile, and kind of being told what to do for centuries and centuries. So I very much agree with the fact that we need to switch from being told what to do to actually being more proactive and building networks and collaborative systems to allow us to build and maybe reshape the conversation. But it's a matter of power as well. You know, where's the power? Where's the cash coming from? All our institutions are pretty much, if we look behind the institutions that we have, I think there are a lot of people who are not too happy with the AU at the moment, feeling that they could do a lot more to facilitate some of the systemic changes we need and to break down some of the silos that we're seeing. You know, countries are in silos, tribes are in silos, you know, Black people are siloed all over the place. And so there is no coordination. And so that is a major challenge for us in terms of our infrastructure and our institutions. So it's great to hear that she's launching this new organization, which may be able to tackle some of those issues. But really, it's about collaboration and co-design as well. Those who are affected by some of these issues, that's us. How do we come together to have a say in how this could work? You know, those in the diaspora, I work with the diaspora a lot. I mean, I'm a diasporan. I returned to Ghana 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now. Time flies. But, you know, I can see both sides. You know, I can see how people here on the ground, I mean, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs on the continent, across the continent, and I see challenges. I know what they're going through. You know, how you know, to get a sample from East Africa to West Africa is so expensive. It's so much more expensive than shipping it out to Europe, and it's the same with flights and stuff like that. Why are these systems still in place, and how do we actually go about breaking these things down? So it's about the how, and getting very serious about thinking through and figuring out who can help us to detangle some of the systemic barriers that we're continuing to face.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Max, what are your views on this?
I believe that we need to unify. I mean, the way forward for Africa is for us to come together, you know, in light of, you know, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, for example. That's in effect. I see that as an opportunity for us to move into manufacturing and production. I mean, from time immemorial, all we've been really doing is exporting raw materials, commodities, gold, cocoa, timber. We're not adding any value to these commodities. So I think the way forward really is to industrialize, invest in our manufacturing base, and add value to our raw materials, go into finished products. Now, you know, if you talk about the population of Ghana, approximately 30 million. The Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're opening up the whole market of Africa. We're talking about 1.2 billion people, as an ambassador alluded to. So now the market is opened up. We have an opportunity to export to Nigeria, you know, and vice versa, you know, as well as the whole African continent. So we need to take advantage of this opportunity and, you know, we need to really put our heads together and unify. That's the key thing. We need to move in one mind. We can't predict the future, but we can determine it. You know, we are architects of our own destiny. Absolutely. At the end of the day. So that's what I believe.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. I don't know whether Ambassador can hear us. Ambassador, can you hear me? Let's see if Ambassador. Kwabena, Ebro. Hold on one.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on today's show. I don't know whether Ambassador can hear us. She's on here, but I can't see her picture.
You know, it's not there. I just see her name.
Yeah, I see her name. Let me, because I know that she said that when I add another person, she can't hear. Let me just.
I'll mute my.
Yeah, mute for a second. Ambassador, can you hear me? Oh. Ambassador, can you hear me? Oh, okay. I've lost Ambassador. I'm sure she will come back on. Before I go to Ebro, let me just hear from Kwabena.
Evening, Denta.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Awesome, awesome. What are your views so far on the conversation?
Well, you know what? Before we have the views, let's have the thanks. Yeah. So from the diaspora, from me and all of us to you for organizing this. And most important, I don't think it does justice to call the spirit wearing the yellow an ambassador. She's what we refer to as an auntie or nana. She essentially is the de facto head of the diaspora movement. To see her wearing the color of hope, yellow, inspiring all of us today is an amazing thing. And it's a shame she might not be able to hear my words, but I've got the support of a lot of people in saying this. Her enemies are our enemies. And I think the good news I have to report to her is that there's many soldiers ready to engage in essentially what is the start of like an insurgency now, because we've been talking about the issues for a long time. I think a lot of us have to accept, including myself, we talk a lot, we're not doing enough. But occasionally you need like a spiritual head of a movement. And Nana Arikana is one of those. You're one of those. And you know, it's such a pleasure, as most of us are on quarantine now, and it takes things like this. This should be happening every week. I want to ask, call the president of the Republic and ask him to come and speak to his children to inspire us, because we're up for this. There's essentially a war going on. And, you know, some of us have children. We definitely have a future, but the future lies with us making the efforts. There's many people that want to contribute to the struggle. And, you know, what we're waiting for essentially is for the government also. You know, there's a saying, ask not what your government can do for you, what you can do for your government or your country. We're ready to do, but there's a lot of people that don't have the means, the time sometimes to really engage with the motherland in the way that they would want. And I feel like the government, if they're really serious about this diaspora movement, should really sit down with some of the people that are making efforts and say, well, actually, how do we create a bridge here? How do we create a bridge? You've got a rent, you've got mortgage, you've got young children, you want to come and fight the good fight. Can we help? Can we give you a project in the government that's needed by the country, but we'll hold you up for 6 months or a year? Not for us to pontificate to our brothers on the motherland, of course not, but to contribute. Forget and put China to one side for now. We can't compete with China. China is doing what they have to do, and we should do what we have to do. And you know, if you're going to have a fight, or at the start of an insurgency, it's not very smart to fight on two fronts. We have a historic foe that we need to address, and actually we have to be quite smart and savvy with the Chinese. So I just want to say thank you to you and to Nana Arikana. I'm not going to call her ambassador. There's loads of interest from us on the outside to help and contribute, and many people are doing their bit for the cause. And I think there's lots of hope. I think there's lots of opportunities in Africa. I think we all have to take small steps. I think it starts with the mentality. It's not about the money. I'm on WhatsApp groups that collectively there's 600-700 people. Like Nana Arikana said, pooling resources is not the issue. But up here, we're kind of deficient sometimes. We're not teaching our children our history. We're not accepting who we are. We sell each other out. If we don't want to stop that, we're going to have serious problems. This year is the year for everybody to decide. You're either with us or you're against us. It's as simple as that, because the stakes have got so high now for us in the diaspora with the way the economy is moving. We actually don't have the time to carry people anymore.
Absolutely.
So it's a serious issue we're facing, serious issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to see whether Ambassador can hear us. Her picture is not on. She's seems to be online, but I can't see her face. Let me just send her a message. I don't know whether she can hear me. Whilst we are doing that, I'll get Bernard. Hi, Bernard.
Hi, Denta. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, thank you. What are your views so far on the topic while I try and get Ambassador back online?
Well, it's refreshing. I mean, hearing from Ambassador Arikana is really refreshing. Bear in mind that she was Africa's ambassador to the UN for several years, and she's got inside information. And really, we all know her views. We've known her views since last year when some of us got to know who she was. But there's always an angle to some of these things. I mean, the ethos of the African outside the African continent is very, very strong. If you look at the continent itself, the continent has been said to have so much potential. We in the diaspora are contributing about 11 billion every year to the continent of Africa. The African GDP itself is about 3 trillion, which is about a third of United States of America as well. But it's got potential to grow. I mean, come the year 2050, 2 of Africans' population will be equivalent children in the world. So about 30% of all youth in the world will be in Africa. The problem we have now is the exposure that COVID-19 has brought to the continent. Now, we know that about 500 million Africans live in the cities. The African cities contribute about 50% of African GDP. We know that this COVID is going to decimate about 40 to 50% of the GDP from the cities. So that's a huge decimation of our potential in income. The role that the diaspora can play is bringing their knowledge, their human capital, their resources together. I mean, we do it on a low-key level with the remittances that we send to Africa, which I say is about 11 billion. But if we bring our minds together, as Ambassador has suggested and as Kwabena has also mentioned, but there's also a quid pro quo, which is that although some of us feel very Ghanaian, sometimes you're not treated as Ghanaian by your own rules and regulations, and in the situation of Ghana, our constitution, which doesn't recognize us as full Ghanaians. And therefore, we are not allowed to participate in political decision making. So the field is not open, it's not level playing field. And these are some of the problems that we have in the diaspora. But I believe that the diaspora has a different experience. And this experience is together with those in our countries. If we bring that to bear in developing Africa with the potential that we have, I'm sure that we can go places with our potential.
Yeah. Bernard, someone has just said one of the major issues Africa is facing is that we don't support each other. In order for us to go through all of these burdens we are facing, we must come together. The separation is our weakness.
Well, the ambassador put it better. She said the Jews are proud as being Jews. The Chinese stick together. The Asians stick together. And she tells you that an African is proud to live in a white-only area, but the Asian is proud to live in an Asian area. The problem is that we are not together. Let's not beat around the bush. We are not together. Why? I have no idea. We've always said that a black man is his own enemy. It may be the reasons of colonialism, the fact that, we've always been educated that, what is white is better than what is black. And that's why maybe you even find some people bleaching and all those things. Maybe that is why. But I'll say that the mental emancipation, which began several years ago, has not finished. Now our youth, with the MIFRI Ghana time when the Ghanaian Black Star went to the World Cup, the fact that our children, the second and third generation Ghanaians, now identify with Ghana or Africa, that itself for me is a start of the emancipation. And once we can emancipate our minds, all this negativity that brings us down as our people will go away. But we need to unfetter the chains that has bound us over all these centuries. We have to do that. Nobody can do that for us. And to do that, we need to realize that we are only one people, and it is only us who can control our destiny.
Absolutely. And I'm just gonna go over to Ebro. Can you hear me, bro?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So Ebro's in the US, presenter on Hot 97 in the US. You know, one of the guys, I don't know if you can read up on your screen, says,
Yeah.
you know, one of the major issue Africa is facing is that we don't support each other, and we are not coming together. Now, African Americans have been, you know, we split some 400 years ago, but still we are not coming together. Why do you think this is, Ebro?
I think it's a lot of what everyone already knows and is discussed on what I've seen the last 15 minutes conversation. A lot of it has to do with colonialism. It has to do with the way we have our cultures and, you know, have been devalued. The way our access to information about ourselves has not been accessible. Especially I can speak for the United States and Black Americans in the United States. You know, we don't learn about our history and the depth of damage and trauma in our public school systems. And then, you know, because of broken homes, because of, you know, mom working 2 and 3 jobs to survive, you know, dad being emasculated by society and stepped on, a lot of households don't have these cultural learnings at home outside of the school system. I know there's a lot of young parents now in America taking upon themselves to teach the youth, but you know, we're still getting up to the time in many ways. And so I know there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work ahead of us. And I think, you know, what I'm seeing with a lot of movements here in the United States and internationally is Black people trying to find ways to work together. I think there's a lot of promising energy and positive energy taking place. And I think those of us that are able should do our best to lead by example into the future with action and actionable items so that we can bring people along with us. You know, a lot of African nations are only, you know, 60, 70 years old as independent. And you think about Black Americans and us trying to, you know, get our footing economically in the United States. That's still taking place right now. While I'm on this call, you know, the hardest hit communities in America are Black ones when we're talking about COVID-19. And, you know, we've had, you know, state of emergency conversations that Diddy just hosted. Colin Kaepernick is leading a charge to, you know, raise money and dig into these communities so that we can even get our hospitals personal protective equipment here in New York City, whether it's Harlem Hospital, whether it's in the Bronx, whether it's in Queens. You know, many of the hospitals that are in our neighborhoods are underfunded. You have schools that are underfunded. So these are all things that Black people aren't just dealing with in Africa or the UK or Brazil. These are things that we are dealing with here in the United States as well, that we have to overcome, as well as find ways for us to work together and work with each other to uplift each other into the future. And you know, we got a long road ahead, but you know, I believe there's a lot of positive energy taking place. Moments like this where we're having dialogue and sharing information. I think if we can make these things more commonplace and also learn to trust and love each other more on a global scale, I think that's going to put us on the right path.
Absolutely. Ambassador, can you hear us? Ambassador, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but it's broken up. There's a lot of static.
Can you, is there still static
broken
now?
up. It's broken up. It's static, a lot of static. I think some people must get off.
Okay, all right.
Can you get a couple of,
before I get off,
yeah.
Can I just say something? A lot of it is like a calling. Most of the people on this group chat and most of the people that care about this stuff have been called to care. Yeah. And then there's going to be another sector of people that are inspired by the people that are called And then there's going to be something called, unfortunately to say, dead weight. Yeah. People that know what's happening and quite frankly don't care. And that's really sad. So we actually got to be prepared to drop some dead weight, and we've got to be prepared to do less talking, a little bit more doing. We have this COVID thing. It's not about being Ghanaian. I heard some of the boys talk about Ghana. This is not about Ghana. I'm African before I'm Ghanaian, and all of us are African first. That should be the first ideology that we have in our head. We should teach our children of their history. We should ask them to remember self. We should ask them to remind them about their own spirituality. These core concepts should be implanted at home. It's like an indoctrination program. Once that kicks in, over a generation or two, you'll find the mentality of the African mindset becomes more light and uplifted and positive about their own outlook in this world and their place in this world. But I encourage you, before I shut up, that you should be the fulcrum between the diaspora and essentially the state. Let them engage with us. Some of the people in government should be on this call. Yeah, the questions that are deep in our, I can assure you, a lot of the people on this group chat, every night they go to bed, they think about Africa. And every morning they wake up, they think about Africa. But you know, it takes a bit of two. We're willing to bridge, but they've got to create a little bit of a bridge for us and help us and help guide and help instruct us where the help is needed as well. So I think it's really important.
Thank you so much, Kwabena. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Ambassador. Ambassador, can you read what's on the screen? Can you hear me? Ambassador, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Oh, hello, Ambassador, can you hear me? Uber, I'm just going to try and put you backstage. Don't go off, but I'm just going to see if she hears me now. Ambassador, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No, no sound.
I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now? I can hear you now. I can hear you though.
Everything is on. You want me to sign out and come back in?
But I can hear you. Are you sure you can't?
I can't hear you.
Okay, sign out and come back.
Come out and I come back in.
Yes. Okay. Oh dear. Let's just. Okay. Whilst we wait for her to come back in.
Hey, we're making it work with the technology, right? We're doing our best to have this conversation. So
we're trying our best to have this conversation.
I'm sure the audience is going to be very patient. Yeah.
You know, we've had. You know, last year we had an amazing year of return. We had a lot of African Americans come to Ghana. We know the racism that's going on in America with Black people, but still, we still can't seem to get our brothers and sisters to understand that Africa is home. Why is this?
I think there's just tremendous disconnect, right? It's not something that has become commonplace. And practiced. And I think that's one of the reasons I was passionate about being involved in the year of return for the last couple of years, is because I wanted to make it feel, you know, normal. I wanted to make it feel like something we do every year. And I wanted to, you know, bring a level of cool factor to just, you know, there's a lot of people who have a negative perception of Africa because that's what's fed to them from the education system here in America. And, you know, and it seems like worldwide, right? From what I hear from other individuals and even African people from Africa who, you know, who believe that moving somewhere else means that they've, you know, improved their life and made a better life for themselves because they've left the nation that, you know, is near and dear to their heart and their culture and their fabric behind to go somewhere else and quote unquote, make a better life for themselves. But really what they've done is they've, you know, basically abandoned their culture to co-opt often this American culture, or maybe it's British culture, right? because that's what they've been told is the way to find success, and that's the way success has been defined. And that's something that we have to show. We have to turn that around.
Yeah.
We have to show that being successful is not defined by necessarily how much money is in your bank account, but what you've done to form and lead a path for legacy. And what you're going to do for culture, and what you're going to do to create spaces where people who look like you and are of your of your heritage can be celebrated, right? And the more we can do those things and show people that we can celebrate one another in spaces that we create for us, by us, right? We've heard that a lot. I think the more it'll become second nature to people to reach out. I think, also in having the ambassador on, one of the things that I don't even know if it's completely understood, how hard it is for African leaders and African nations to even control their own resources that are in the ground so they can build their own economies, right? Like we hear the ambassador, a lot of people posted her, what she said last year with regard to the African Union. Yeah. And what is happening with the Francophone nations and what's been happening. And we need to be, I would love to hear conversations about how we can participate in unraveling those backwards deals that leave African nations impoverished and give their wealth to Europe. Because those are the things that are ultimately going to bring the resources back to Africa and allow African nations to empower their workforce and train and educate the workforce for tomorrow. Because, when corporations begin to look around the world for where they're going to, put offices and build their companies, African nations have tremendous workforce and people who are willing to work, and they have to be trained for the jobs of tomorrow. Look, right here in the United States, many communities and public school systems. Our public school system is not preparing our youth for the jobs of tomorrow. Yeah. Right. And that's in the United States. Yeah. You right. So, we need to, I would love to hear more dialogue around how African nations and African leaders are going to unravel these deals they have with European nations and begin to take control of their economies a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a lot of work to do, honestly.
No, but once again, when you talk about China, you're talking about a nation that has been, controlling their culture and controlling their narrative for thousands of years, right? When you talk about, even when you talk about America, you're talking about a nation that's 200 and something years old. Yeah. Right. As much legacy and heritage is in Africa, the nations as we know them today are very young. Yeah. The fact that we're having this conversation on a public forum, if you put it in the grand scheme of everything that has taken place, it's and this is me trying to, look at the bright side. Yeah. I'm honored that it's even happening. Yeah. I didn't know this would even take place in my lifetime. And I know it feels like we are at the bottom because financially we are, but there's so much promise ahead of us if we continue to communicate and we continually provide a level of consistency in our plans over an extended period of time. And that's what it takes. It takes sticking to the plan. It takes discipline.
Absolutely. Ebro, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to try and put the ambassador back on.
I'm honored. And for the audience and for you, even when you asked me to be a part of this, I was like, I'm not quite sure I'm qualified.
You are way qualified. You are.
I'm just honored to be able to provide a voice and bring to light these conversations and help people find a path to reconnect with Africa. And so I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you.
Ambassador, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yay. Awesome. 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 Were you able to hear what Ebro said?
No, I did not. It's very broken up. I couldn't understand anything, but you can paraphrase it for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was just basically us just coming together, really, like you've been saying. So there's a list of questions. I'm just going to run through some of them, but can you read what's on the screen at the moment?
Black Panthers were to inclusionist and integrationist. What does that mean?
I don't know what this person is trying to say. I think they see as some, let's see what this person. Until Africans change its leaders, let's forget it.
Well, I often say, let's not talk about Africa and paint Africa with one brush. When we make such blanket statements, we're also imprinting those blanket statements in our heads.
Yeah.
I can tell you we have quite a few countries, quite a few heads of states who are doing very well for their people, and they're struggling under some very difficult conditions. So to make a blanket statements about all African heads of states, that's just not fair. Let's have discussions that we can discuss issues, country after country. But at the end of the day, you must also remember, a leader is as good as the people around them. No country is perfect. A leader can't do it alone. The reality is the brain drain that has taken place over the centuries has left Africa without the capacity that Africa needs to build ourselves. And I always use the example of healthcare.
Yeah.
If all the African doctors, the continental African doctors, the African-American doctors were to go to Africa today, we're only going to meet about 30% of the need. Africa today needs about 1.2 million doctors. So no amount of money put into healthcare will give us the desired results because the capacity is not there. If you take, for example, Ghana, President Nana Addo thought building new hospitals, renovating old ones was the way to deal with healthcare. Well, half of those wards are empty, not because there are no patients, but because there are no doctors. There are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in Ghana. So let's be serious. Removing a president, if we don't address other issues, it's not going to make any difference. So that's why I'm saying we need a holistic approach to our problems in Africa. We must also realize, while we are complaining about our parents not having good healthcare in Ghana, let's not forget that there are many of us in New York City that could go home and help, but we're too comfortable where we are. Let's face it, the brain drain is another serious problem, and this is where we come in. Let's not ask those on the continent to do something that we are not doing. Until we diaspora are able to unite and speak with one voice, why would we want to point fingers at people who are 10,000 miles away? First of all, deal with your own backyard. You need to make sure that you get along with your brothers and sisters. Let's pull our monies together. Let's play our part. But we want to sit here and point fingers at the people at home and expect them to change. Who do you think is going to change the leadership? You are here.
Yeah.
So let's face it. Let's play our part. Let's unite. Let's pull our funds together so we can go in and be on the driver's seat of all the projects that are getting ready to be rolled out, all the continental projects that are getting ready to be rolled out. If we do not unite, the Chinese are going to take those contracts. The Europeans are going to take those contracts, and we will still stay in the diaspora and continue to complain and do nothing about it. We can no longer continue to be noisemakers. We must unite. ADDI is what I'm feeling, that we can come together. Here is the entity that we can rally behind. We can get the contracts, speaking with one voice, so we can no longer stop. We can no longer continue to complain about what the heads of states are doing or not doing. The question is, what are you doing? Because there's a lot that we could do as African diaspora, but somehow we want everybody else to do it so we can waltz in and go home to an Africa that's built up. Well, let me tell you, the Cape to Cairo highway is going to be built. The question is by who? The Senegal to Djibouti highway is going to be built. The question is by who? Large commercial farms are going to be built. The question is by who? We need to be on the driver's seat. We need to be prepared to move in, but we're waiting for somebody else to do it. We're waiting for somebody to build the Africa we want. Well, you are used to living like you live here in the United States or in Europe. But guess what? Whoever builds it for you to waltz in, they're going to own it.
It's true.
So how do we get that transfer of power? We are at a point where these are opportunities that Black people never get. You're talking major continental projects that are ready to be rolled out. The question is, where are we?
Yeah.
If we don't come together, we're going to miss this boat. And this time, Africa is going to be gone forever. And if you think you're going to sit and wait for African leadership to change before you can go home, well, guess what? You might as well just forget it.
Yeah.
We need to unite and we need to play our part. And before we can complain about what other people are doing, let's look at what we can do in the diaspora. Because what's happening among us, the divisions, the self-hate, the mistrust among each other, it's sad. It's just really, really sad. Until we can address that also, nothing is going to change. Because the diaspora are the missing link when it comes to building the Africa we want. The capacity that the continent needs is in the diaspora. No single African country, as we speak right now, has the capacity to build a railway line.
Yeah.
So how do you think the heads of states are going to develop the country? Go home. Go get the contract to build the railway line. But we even know where our engineers are. And yet we have them. We have lots of engineers who are very capable, but we are disorganized. So let's also take responsibility for that which we can do, rather than sit here and just complain.
Yeah, because I feel like sometimes we do a lot of too much complaining and not enough action. I mean, we've talked about this issue for a long time, and I'm really hoping.
I lost you again.
Can you hear me? Oh no, can you hear me?
I lost you.
Oh, Ambassador, hello? Ambassador, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, man. Okay, Jenny.
Hi, Denta.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
How are you?
Good, I'm good.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on the conversation? I'm going to be wrapping up in about 3 minutes.
I was listening to Madam Ambassador and I couldn't agree more. It's really unfortunate because one of my business, actually, the manufacturing is based in China. So just to let you know, like, I saw the video and I saw what was happening and I was heartbroken. But I'm going to go back to what she was saying. Everything she said, that's what I preach every single day. I have a platform on YouTube and that's what I preach. It's really unfortunate. I am from Cameroon, by the way. I'm from Cameroon. So it's really unfortunate to get to a place where I feel like this was a blessing in disguise to a certain extent. It was really a call for all Africans to stand up and really work together as a unit. I wish we were more brothers and sisters. Like I want to see a Ghanaian in China being, mistreated, and I want to see a Cameroonian stand up for that Ghanaian. I think for such a long time we've always said, I am Cameroonian, you are Ghanaian, you are Nigerian. And I think it's about time we actually see ourselves as one. We are Africans. So I'm just like everything that she was saying, I was just nodding my head like, yes, exactly. But I also think it really comes from, we have to change our mindset. Like I can't even tell you how many times I've had to have conversations or I've
Ambassador, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hear you.
Yay!
I can hear you.
Awesome. Awesome. I know I've taken up a lot of your time, but we're just going to quickly go through. Maybe we'll do 5 questions and then we wrap up.
Absolutely.
Okay. So can you read what's on the screen at the moment?
Yes, colonial interests, we need our own organizational structures. I agree about the need for organizational structures, but again, you get to understand the majority, the bulk of the expertise that is needed is in the diaspora. I cannot overemphasize this situation enough. You guys got to understand, you're here and you're needed at home. Let's organize. I understand it's easier said than done. We can't just pick up and go home, but we can still get involved even from, let me give you a simple, I was talking to one head of state and said, Ambassador, what problem do the diaspora have by coming to Africa, pull your funds together, come to Africa, invest, go back to Europe, go back to the US, go back to the US, and play golf while your money is working for you in Africa, just like they do.
Yeah.
They are going to Africa poor and they come back rich. And we're too busy talking about, oh, until the government changes, I'm not going there. Well, guess what? They're getting rich.
Yeah.
They're getting your contracts.
Yeah.
They're taking what belongs to you.
Yeah.
Go home, invest. Let's pull our funds together. Let's take these continental contracts. You can still go back where you live and play golf while your money is working for you. Trillionaires are going to be made out of Africa. Billionaires are going to be made out of Africa. And those billionaires are not going to be you and I, because we're too busy complaining. Let's be realistic here. We are at a very do or die time. Either we wake up or we're going to continue to suffer from the mentality of colonization.
Absolutely.
Home is calling. The heads of states are ready to give us the contracts through ADDI. That is exactly what we're going to do. Opening the doors, engaging in those conversations to make sure that the children of Africa, we're going to hold the heads of states to their word. They want the diaspora to come home. We're going to say, heads of states, you asked for the diaspora. Here they are. I have 1 million of them, 1 million strong. Now tell me why the next airport is going to be built by a Chinese or European. Tell me why the next railway line is going to be built by a non-African. Because when we come together and we are now united and they know how to reach us, that's how we make a difference. But to continue to complain when we are not united, how do they reach us?
Yeah.
How do they communicate with us? We have to do our part. We don't have a choice. We have to unite. If we do not unite, then we need to be quiet because we're not ready.
Absolutely.
This situation is calling for unity.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you read what Francis is saying?
Say that again.
On the screen at the moment, the comment.
The average African woman is fighting for just the basic needs such as food, shelter, etc. when we are enriched with good land and plenty food growing. Absolutely. It again goes back to what I was saying. I use an example of Egypt, for example. The country of Egypt is paying $7 billion to farmers in Ohio in the United States. Food for Egypt should be grown in sub-Saharan Africa. Why aren't we negotiating with Egypt? Because it's very difficult to trade with each other, thanks to the Berlin Conference. We are going to be growing food, but somebody else is going to do it if we don't come together and come up with regional farming areas to grow wheat. We strategize and say how much wheat is needed in this region to feed this many people. And we start growing. We start agriculture. It's giving us the. We just need to pull our resources together. We need to organize. Those of us in agriculture, come together. Let's come up with ideas, the latest technologies in farming. The land is there. The heads of states are saying, come home and do the farming because you're the one with the expertise. We don't have many with expertise on the continent. I can't overemphasize this enough. We have a role to play and we need to go home and play our part. We're not saying move back if you're not ready, but you can still contribute. And ADDI, we're going to do our part to pave the way so it becomes easier and easier to go back home. Let's work together. Go to our ADDI.org. Stand up and be counted because you matter. Sign up. We want to know who you are and what
Definitely.
you do.
We're going to be sharing out all the information that you have stated today. And we're going to make sure that as Gooba Enterprise, we back what you are doing and get every single diaspora to sign up to this great initiative. There's a question that is on the screen at the moment.
Economically, we don't have access to the global market despite our resources. And it's evident that the West exploits our resources, leaving us with nothing but a draining economy. Absolutely. That's why, again, they are getting away with it because there are no options. When we come together and we pull our resources together and we begin to manufacture, we begin to add value to our natural resources, that's how we change the conversation. Yeah. But again, somehow we want miracles to happen. Miracles are not going to happen. Like I said, healthcare. We can complain about the healthcare situation. The heads of states can build new hospitals and clinics, but if the doctors are not there, we can never improve the healthcare system. We need to have a strategy, which is why, again, through ADDI, we're talking about the Wakanda villages. The Wakanda villages are brand new cities, which are going to be growth points for each region. We're going to say, pick up education. Where are we today? How many schools, primary schools, universities? How many technical colleges do we need? We start training, starting with Wakanda, with measurable results, short-term, long-term. By 20 years, latest 20 years, we can say access to education is a thing of the past. We do the same thing with healthcare. We do the same thing with access to power, access to water, even tourism and agriculture. Agriculture, we should have a short window, but we can organize, we can strategize and come up with a development plan that is going to take care of 1.27 billion people, not piecemealing the development like we have done for the past 60 years, which was, again, a plan from the Berlin Conference to keep us divided so we can never really achieve true liberation and independence that we need. African diaspora, once more, I want you to know, you are needed. You are the capacity that Africa needs. You are the brain drain that has left Africa, and that brain must be reversed. You must play your part before we can point fingers at our brothers and sisters on the continent about what they are doing or not doing. Let's also organize ourselves so we can be prepared to play our part. Because this time, there's a need for us. There's a big void that's waiting for the African diaspora. Either we fill that void or somebody else, other people, non-Africans, non-diaspora, will fill it up. It is really just that simple. We organize and fill it, or if we don't fill it, somebody else is going to fill that void. Plain and simple. And if I leave you with any word, is to say, it is that simple.
Absolutely.
It is that simple.
It's true. It is that simple. So we've got a message from Miss Abba. Can you see that on the screen?
Yes, let's not forget the impact that young people are making in this, bringing about true information about our continent, kickstarting initiatives for education and health development, promoting tourism to Africa. What can we do to ensure more impact? Again, it goes back to ADDI. We are going to be having tourism officer, not only at the headquarters, but in all the offices as we open them. Once again, anything that we are going to do depends on our unity. Let's come together. Let me give an example. I had a friend of mine who was a urologist, and they were having issues with renal disease in India. So a group of them got together. They decided that they were going to do something. They agreed, since every one of them was going home to India every year. When you go to India, plan on opening a dialysis clinic where you come from. Over a period of 5 years, they had built over 1,000 dialysis centers. That's what people do when they believe in each other and in themselves. We can't even come together enough to build a hospital because we don't believe in each other, but we like to complain.
It's true.
Guys, it starts with us. It starts with us in believing in ourselves and in each other.
Absolutely.
I don't know how else to say it except that.
Absolutely. The last question, and then we'll get your feedback on the whole conversation that we've had so far. So can you see that on the screen?
Yes, our local constitutions are built against Africans in the diaspora. Let me explain how decisions are made at the African Union. You have the Permanent Representative Council, which is made up of the 55 ambassadors from each country. They live in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. All the issues are presented through them. They deal with what they can deal with. Issues that are above their pay grade, they pass them on to the Executive Council. The Executive Council is made up of the 55 foreign ministers. They also deal with those issues. Anything that is above their pay grade, they pass it on to the heads of states, which is the Bureau. The issue of the 6th region is stuck. It went through the Executive Council, but it has not gone through to the Bureau, to the heads of states. Why? There has not been a representative group of the diaspora. Where do you call to reach the diaspora? How do you reach the diaspora? So until we unite, and right now the champion for diaspora is the president of Kenya. If we were to have 1 million signatures of the diaspora, that we can then say to President Uhuru, President, you are the champion for the diaspora. The children of Africa have come home. Here we are, 1 million of them. They are ready to play their role in building the Africa that we want. We want you to present this issue at the next summit of the heads of states so a decision can be made. And we put down what we need. The key thing is we want dual citizenship. We want people to be able, even those who were not born in Africa, they should also be allowed, as long as you declared yourself as Black. We put all that in writing so the heads of states can approve it. That's how things are done. But to sit here and say, constitutions don't include us, you gotta be realistic. Some people were born here, they're descendants of the formerly enslaved. How do we make decisions about them, individual countries? They cannot. So we have to make a case. The good thing is the 6th region was approved. It finished the executive council. Now we need to have the numbers so we can approach President Uhuru Kenyatta and say, Mr. President, the children of Africa are ready to come home. Here they are. Can we proceed to a decision? We get diaspora lawyers. I'll be happy to help whatever group of people you can put together to make sure that we get a document that we send to the president, and he will present it for us for voting to the rest of the heads of states. But there is a system that we can follow to make sure that the diaspora are completely included. Those born on the continent, living outside Africa, including those who were not born on the continent, because the heads of states are saying we're all African diaspora. So therefore we should come home. We need to simply say, we're answering your call, plain and simple.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. I call you mummy. I call you my mentor. And I just want to say a big thank you for spending nearly 2 hours with us on this topic. And just to let you know that we are ready to support you in everything that you're doing. We will start the campaign with DDDI, and we'll make sure that every single person that's in the diaspora signs up and puts in that they are willing to help the motherland grow and for us to unite as Africans.
Absolutely. I also want to say one more thing. There's a petition going around where we are also addressing, please make sure everybody signs it. We want the president of China to know that the people, we are going to any down. He has got to listen to us, and the abuse that's coming out of the Chinese towards the Africans has got to stop. So I urge everyone to sign the petition. Let's send a strong message to President Xi Jinping of China. Thank you.
Thank you, Mummy. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that this is a beginning of a bigger relationship. I also think that we should do a conference with yourself to engage the diaspora so people can actually get to see you in person and ask you the questions. So I'm going to be putting on a conference with yourself that we will plan together once this epidemic is over, if that would be okay with you, Mummy.
That's absolutely wonderful. Anything to promote the diaspora, I'm on it.
Thank you so much. Please keep
safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You do the same and keep up the good work of bringing us together. These kinds of platforms are needed because we must have the conversations. Quite often, some people just simply do not know. It's only when we engage each other that we can begin to open our eyes and understand our circumstances so we can make better decisions about how we move forward with our continent as a united front, as a united African diaspora. I thank you again, my daughter. I really appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Mummy. God bless you and speak to you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stephen, can you hear me? Oh, Stephen has got bad reception. Well, guys, it's the end of the show. Nearly 2 hours. I hope that you've been inspired. I hope that you've got something in you now that's, been sparked, that, we are the change of Africa, but it's down to us really on what we can do to impact our motherland. Let's all come together. I'm going to set up a conference once this COVID-19 is over. I'm praying for all of the healthcare workers, doctors and nurses, and all of those people who are on the front line fighting on behalf of the people. And I also want to say a big thank you for all of you for joining us today. Please do keep sharing the link. Maybe somebody out there may be inspired by this. I would say good night. Thank you so much. And make sure also, I just want to say that if you are in the diaspora, make sure that you use TapTapSend. It is a beautiful money transfer company. All you have to do is use DENTA as the short code and you get £5 to give to somebody else. So make sure that you use TapTapSend. Also, tomorrow we'll be, unveiling our video, my interview with Sarkodie. Tomorrow, right here on YouTube, you will get the opportunity to see the other side of Sarkodie. And if there's any interviewer that you think that we should interview for next week, please let me know and I will contact them so we bring you the best. Thank you so much. Take care and God bless.